0.263.
All right, let's take a look at that. So Pocono will be a first lap hot lap, and it is an interesting lap, I will say that much. So I gotta go all the way back to here. So entering turn 3 on your out lap, I like to do this thing. Some people say, oh, you just run the top, right? I don't really like running the top too much there. What I like to do is start high and then kind of aim my car to come 2 lanes down and then back up. That just makes, because I have 2 goals here. I want to keep my wheel as straight as possible so I can carry the most speed, and I want to get on the throttle as quick as possible. So what I do here is I drag a little brake, point the car down to the seam right here, second seam up, and then once my car is pointed that way, I start raising the throttle slightly, make sure that I get there, and then once I get there, I go full throttle and I start unloading the wheel. And the car is so loose at this point that you can kind of just hold it in an equilibrium and drive it straight off the corner, and this will carry pretty much the most speed that you'll be able to get. You might be able to rip it a little higher, but this is very fast and still consistent. Now here's a very interesting thing. I am almost a full lane off the wall because at Pocono and all other tracks where straightaways are super long, wall arrow comes into play. So if you stay super close to the wall for the entire straightaway, it's going to slow your car down multiple hundredths. So I just, for good measure, like to keep about 1 lane, half a lane off the wall, just to mitigate those effects. And then once I get close enough, kind of like when the cones start, I start coming back up to the wall because it doesn't really matter at that point. And I actually do have a marker for Pocono. I almost never have markers for turn-in and whatnot. So I'm not very helpful usually at that point. But right at the 1 cone mark, I start getting off the throttle to about half and turning into the corner. You see a little brake there? That's nothing. That's just me getting ready to brake. It's not really doing anything. So I start turning in. So I want to aim my car at the apex that you see. This isn't the apex of the corner, but it's like what you make a straight line with. So I go to half throttle, turn in, and then I just drag my brake once I start turning down the hill. And I just drag that brake very slightly until you get to the yellow line. If you hit the brake too hard, it's going to kick out your rears. If you hit the brake too soft, then you're going to like miss the apex and just go straight. So you got to get this really tiny, like less than 10% amount of brake to get the car to that yellow line. But then here's the interesting thing. You want to pick up the throttle and slide up the track. This goes against what I usually say. But the thing is that there is such little rear grip on the exit of these corners, and the straightaways are so long that you got to do whatever is possible to hook up your tires. So I'm actually purposefully sliding up off the yellow line and keeping the car in a tight condition. You see how much steering wheel I was using there? This is like breaking all of my rules for oval racing, but this is because it's for hot lap. And I just want to keep the car tight so that I can keep the rears engaged. And so I'm able to get in the throttle super early. I'm able to drive straight up the track, and there's even enough natural looseness in the car to rotate and stay off the wall. And the run is just incredible when you're able to do this. If you're driving this car loose and you pick up and you start sliding your rears, you're going to lose so much time because of how long these straightaways are. To like every mile an hour counts. And because of that, I'm doing this super weird line of just driving straight up the track early with a tight condition and just doing whatever I can to drive straight. All right, same thing, stay off the wall for the wall arrow, yada, yada, yada. Okay, now we come down to turn 2. Oops, sorry, where did I go? Come down to turn 2, and I like to turn in right at this Pocono sign right here, or I begin to turn in, and in the be fixed setup, I just like to do a little tiny brake tap, not for too long, and then immediately pick back up the throttle. If you start coasting, your car might just go straight into the wall. So you need to keep this car rotating by going straight from your trail brake to a partial throttle. So my partial throttle is super small here, but I raise it gradually, and then once my car makes a straight line off the corner, I full throttle. I think I full throttled just slightly early here, which is why I got loose there, lost just a tiny bit of time. I think I could have gotten away with straightening my wheel out a bit earlier. But yeah, ideally you don't get loose like that, but it's not a huge deal. So take a look at this one more time here. So brake tap, wide arc, get down there right at the traditional apex, maybe just a tiny bit of a late apex, and then just throttle to keep rotation and try not to get loose. Okay, going to turn 3. I don't have a marker for 3. I kind of just start driving in the corner like at half throttle, and then once I start coming down the hill, I start dragging the brake, and my goal is to get my lefts on like just almost at this point when the curb comes. The reason I don't arc it any further in is because it's really hard to get this car to wide arc 3, because it'll either snap or just won't want to turn it at all. So the bottom just saves so much time. I just get there. My priority is just to get to the bottom. And now this exit's so wide, I can just, once again, just like turn 1, drive it just straight off the corner. You're like, oh, he's never going to make it. He's never going to make it. Well, the corner is just so wide. Take a look at that. No pausing here. So just use all your real estate, even if it doesn't look right, for these hot laps, because using your real estate allows you to carry momentum. And Pocono is one of the most momentum-based tracks in the game because of how long the straightaways are and how tight the corners are relatively, because it's a triangle shape. So you see I slid up like really early, it seemed, but it was all controlled. It was all in order to keep my wheel straight. And I'm just carrying a lot of speed off the corner relatively. And we're able to get a really fast lap time here that I'm pretty happy with. So now let's go look at long run. Alright, now let's do some laps and talk about the long run. So if you've already watched the truck video, this Xfinity video is going to be a lot different feel on the long run compared to the truck. And it all comes down to just keeping the tire force equal, or not getting the car too loose and not getting the car too tight. So I like to have this kind of 53-55% brake bias, and I just enter 1 early and just kind of stay on the bottom, and then as you drive the car straight up the track like so, it's really easy to get the car to kick out there. And you don't want to do that because the right rear is actually going to be pretty important for this race. You can see here, as we go into 2, it's just all on the right rear through the whole thing. So this is naturally wearing the right rear over the right front just because of how loose it is. I'm not turning the wheel pretty much at all. And then in 3 as well, I actually like to dive a little bit deeper into this corner, but if you dive too deep, you start sliding like that. So you have to make it kind of shallow and force your car tight in a way. So we kind of bodged that one a little bit. So we'll give another try here. But basically the qual line is going to be the same as the race line. Draft shouldn't be too bad. There's going to be a lot of skill difference because of how hard this car is to drive on this combo. I think so, at least. So that exit right there is like a perfect exit for me because you're driving up the track in a way that's neither loose nor tight, and that's what we're looking for when we get on the throttle. 3, I like to ease out of it early, get it down to the bottom early, because if you miss the bottom, it's just going to pretty much, you see I barely tapped the wall there. I barely tapped the wall there, and I only missed the bottom by like a foot. So that's how important it is. And I'm going to try an early entry here, get right down early. I probably needed to ride that brake a little longer for long run because I see how early I slid up here. I think I'm going to try dragging the brake a little longer there in 3. We'll give one more try here just to put all of our ideas together. So turn 1, we're going to get to the bottom early and try to drive the car as tight as possible. I drove it a little harder there, still pushing up a little bit. Probably slid up a little bit too early there. I probably don't want to dive in that deep, but it was more or less the same, but probably a little more tire wear all the way around. Turn 2, early entry to the bottom, brake tap, hit it to the bottom. I'm going to be a little more patient here on full throttle so I don't hit the wall. That probably worked out. Then turn 3, I'm going to try dragging that brake once we get down to the curb a little more here. Still wants to slide up. I still really like that early entry. I'm going to give her one more try with the wider entry just to kind of show you how hard it is to get down there and how much tire you use on the wide entry. The early entry of 3 allows you to get down early and then kind of just drive straight up the corner as opposed to arcing it in. You use a ton of wheel to get down there, and I just think that's really bad on tires. You might be going faster on short run with that, but I don't think you're going to be going faster on long run with it. Definitely for like a green-white checker or a shootout type scenario though, maybe go for this wider arc in 3. maybe 2 as well. 2's risky though, because see a wider arc here, you can just kind of straight up miss. And it's really easy to hit the wall. Although this setup is loose enough to where it's pretty easy to stay off the wall. All right, let's set up wider here. See how much wheel I have to use to get it kind of down here? And it still doesn't really even make it down there, but now I get a better launch off the corner. So it kind of pays, but you see that the lap time really isn't any different. All right, so it looks like we're wearing the right front more than the right rear here. So the low brake bias is definitely the play to turn into 1 and to turn into 3. I'm still think managing the right rear is going to be important just because of how much the exits rely on it, but you got to also take those lines to minimize your steering wheel and corner entry, so what we talked about in turn 3, and then also in turn 1 as well. All right, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.